Earlier today, Pfizer and BioNTech announced that they are postponing their rolling application to the Food and Drug Administration for their COVID shots for tots, children between the ages of 6 months and 4 years old. Pfizer said it will wait for its data on a 3-dose series of shots that is not expected until early April. Is this more good than bad news? Joining me now to talk about this is Dr. Andrew Bostom, an academic clinical trialist and epidemiologist who is currently a research physician at the Brown University Center for Primary Care and Prevention at Kent Memorial Hospital in Rhode Island. Dr. Bostom, welcome back to the program.
Thanks for having me back, Joseph.
Great to see you again. Tell us your reaction to Pfizer's delay of the vaccine approval for the youngest among us.
Yeah, I'm relieved, honestly. So the way I understand it, because none of these data, even in a preliminary way, have really been made public. I guess they were unhappy with the antibody response to the 2-shot regimen. In these youngest children, I understand they had reduced the dosage, and now they're going to stretch it out into a 3-dose regimen. In other words, three shots for a primary vaccination series. And all of this really begs the question of how these trials are conducted. And we've talked about this, briefly in the past. That in this case. There's no clinical measure whatsoever, not even a mild infection. In other words, that they were purely looking at an antibody response in these initial studies, and they didn't get one, or didn't get a satisfactory one.
Okay, Dr. Bostom.
Yeah.
I want to jump in there because there's concerns about, apparently, in these trials about the efficacy of the vaccine for children of this age. But I have a more fundamental question. What's the basis of the need? What's the risk to children who are 6 months to 4 years old?
It's absolutely, it's been minimal with the pre-Omicron strains, the original Wuhan strain, the Alpha variant, the Delta variant. And it's even lesser for the Omicron variant. In the entire pediatric age range in the United States, certainly, the state COVID mortality of those kids who are actually infected ranges from literally 0% to 0.03% to maybe 3 in 10,000 infected people. It's extremely low. It's lower than pandemic flu. It's lower than a lot of seasonal flus. And the vaccine itself, as we've seen now, so apparently in adult populations, obviously, has a relatively rapid waning effect where it's not protective, certainly against infection and maybe to a lesser extent against hospitalization and death. But in kids, we have the flimsiest of data, Joseph, the 5 to 11-year-olds, where there actually was a randomized controlled trial. It was 2,300 kids. They wound up randomizing basically 1,550 to the active vaccine, 750 to the placebo. And they prevented 13 very mild infections. Now, one of the strengths of the study was that they over-recruited kids with comorbidity, particularly obesity. About 20% of the entire cohort of 2,300 had comorbidity. In the entire cohort, regardless of whether they got the placebo vaccine or the active vaccine, there wasn't a single hospitalization, none whatsoever. And moreover, there was a subgroup of kids, I think it was about 10%, that had a history of a prior infection. None of those kids even got an infection, regardless of whether they were vaccinated or not.
Then let me ask you another question. Where's the demand coming from for this vaccine for 6 months to 4 years old, if they're even over-representing kids with comorbidities and none of them are getting sick? Where's the demand for this? Why are we even pushing it?
I don't see it, Joseph. You could perhaps argue, and it would have to be, obviously, not a mandated process, a consenting process, that kids that may be at the highest possible risk for COVID, this rare it was thankfully this small niche of children, neurodevelopmental disabilities, maybe genetic abnormalities that lead to immunosuppression, maybe kids for a brief phase undergoing some chemotherapy. Again, it would be a very, very small select population where you might volitionally have their parents opt to vaccinate them. Other than that, I just don't see it. You know, Joseph, in the entire country of Germany, which had a much more granular analysis than we've had in the United States, they could not document a single healthy child who died from COVID, through the pre-Omicron period, the entire period. And moreover, I think it was something like 40% of the children who died with the label of a COVID death were basically in hospice care. You know, so this is not a serious issue for young people across the whole pediatric age spectrum, which goes from less than 1 to 18.
In the last segment, we talked with Congresswoman Mary Miller about the fact that states and schools are beginning to remove mask requirements. What is your medical opinion of that decision?
Oh, it should have happened a long time ago. I mean, and some states basically functioned without them, for virtually all of the pandemic, like South Dakota, like Florida, and without any penalty being paid by their pediatric populations, their school age populations. Recall, Joseph, that Sweden during the first wave, where obviously the least was known, and it turned out to be perhaps the most severe wave. Sweden kept its schools open, in school learning up to age 16. They didn't have a single pediatric death. And the serious COVID morbidity amongst teachers as an occupation was just average. It wasn't higher. I mean, the only group that was higher was actually healthcare workers. Yeah. So that was a mass societal experiment, which played out again from the get-go. And that should have taught us a lot. And by the way, Scandinavian countries frown upon masking, so they don't prohibit it, but it's certainly not mandated or required amongst school children.
Dr. Andrew Bostom, we are out of time, but we are again grateful for you taking some time for us. Thank you very much. Joseph.